Commander Vexus stood at the viewport of the transport shuttle, his forearms crossed in what he considered an impressively intimidating posture. Behind him, his elite squad of Korthian warriors, the best soldiers the Korth Empire had ever produced, checked their ceremonial armor one last time. They were about to dock at the Galactic Military Exchange Station, and Vexus wanted to make absolutely certain that everyone knew who the dominant species was. Squad leader Torvin, Vexus called out without turning around, his dual vocal cords producing that signature harmonic resonance that had intimidated countless species across 12 star systems. Status report. Sir, all warriors are prepared for the exchange ceremony, Torvin replied, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. We have reviewed the files on the humans. They are, how should I put this, underwhelming at best. A ripple of chittering laughter spread through the squad. Vexus allowed himself a thin smile. The humans. Oh, the humans. When the Galactic Council had first announced that Earth would be participating in the annual military exchange program, the entire Korthian command structure had erupted in what could only be described as prolonged, wheezing hilarity. Human, those soft, squishy bipeds from that absurdly dense planet on the far edge of the Orion Arm. Tell me again, Vexus said, finally turning to face his squad, his secondary eye scanning each warrior with approval. What is the gravitational measurement of their home world? 9.8 meters per second squared, Commander, replied Specialist Kreven, consulting her data pad. Approximately 1.4 times standard galactic average. The files classify it as a, and I quote, heavy world. She paused for effect. They actually evolved in that crushing environment. Can you believe it? Heavy world, snorted Vexus. How dramatic. 1.4 times standard. I have trained in 1.3 times standard gravity. The difference is negligible. He flexed his forearms in sequence, each one capable of lifting 3 times his body weight. Meanwhile, we Korthians have perfected our physiology through genetic optimization over 10,000 generations. We are faster, stronger, and more resilient than any natural evolution could produce. Commander, interjected Weapons Master Drolix, his exoskeleton gleaming under the shuttle lights. I reviewed their military accomplishments. They have been spacefaring for less than 200 cycles. 200. We had conquered 4 neighboring systems before they had even invented the combustion engine. And yet, Vexus said, his voice dripping with theatrical sarcasm, the Galactic Council insists we treat them as equals in this exchange program. Equals. As if surviving on a slightly higher gravity world makes them special. He shook his head, his sensory stalks waving in exaggerated disbelief. I have heard the rumors, you know. Other species whisper about human strength, human endurance, human stubbornness. Apparently, we are supposed to be impressed. The squad erupted in another round of laughter. The sound echoed through the shuttle cabin, a mix of clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones that conveyed pure derision. Attention, Korthian vessel, came a voice through the communication system, speaking in perfectly accented Galactic standard. This is Galactic Military Exchange Station Control. You are cleared for docking at Bay 7. Please prepare for artificial gravity adjustment to standard point 9. Point 9? Torvin looked confused. Why would they lower it below standard? Probably to accommodate the poor fragile humans, Kreven suggested with a smirk. Would not want them to hurt themselves walking around their own station now, would we? Vexus felt the subtle shift as the shuttle passed through the station's gravitational threshold. Point 9. He felt lighter already. More agile. More deadly. This was going to be even easier than he had thought. The docking procedure completed with a soft thud, and the hiss of equalizing pressure. Vexus straightened his formal combat sash, the one decorated with 17 medals of valor and 3 citations for exceptional brutality and defense of the Empire. Time to show these humans what real warriors looked like. The airlock door spiraled open, and Vexus strode forward, his squad falling into perfect formation behind him. They marched down the docking corridor with synchronized precision, each footfall echoing with military exactness. As they entered the main reception hall, Vexus took in the scene with his primary eyes while his secondary eyes scanned for threats, a habit from decades of combat. The hall was large, decorated with banners from 24 different species, all participating in this cycle's exchange program. And there, standing in the center with postures that Vexus could only describe as aggressively casual, were the humans. There were 5 of them. 5. Vexus had brought his best squad of 20 warriors, and the humans had sent 5 representatives. The insult was almost too much to bear. Almost. The one in front, a female with dark skin and hair pulled back in a severe style, wore a uniform with insignia that Vexus's translator identified as captain. She was short, maybe 1.6 meters tall, with a build that seemed sturdy but entirely unimpressive compared to Corthian musculature. Her face was smooth, lacking any of the intimidating features that marked a true warrior species. No mandibles, no exoskeleton, no sensory stalks, nothing, just soft flesh and a pair of eyes that watched his approach with an expression that Vexus could not quite interpret. "Commander Vexus," the human said, extending one hand in what his cultural database informed him was a greeting gesture. "I am Captain Rebecca Torres, United Earth Military Liaison. Welcome to the exchange station. We are looking forward to working with you and your squad." Vexus looked down at the offered hand, then slowly, deliberately, extended one of his forearms to grasp it. The human's grip was firm. Too firm, actually. Vexus felt his hand compressed in a way that bordered on uncomfortable before Torres released it. "Captain," Vexus replied, his translator converting his words into English with what he hoped was the appropriate level of condescension. "Your hospitality is noted. I must say, when we were informed that Earth would be participating in the military exchange program, we were surprised. Most species wait until they have achieved at least a millennia of spacefaring experience before attempting to train alongside the galaxy's elite forces." Torres smiled. It was a small smile, the kind that did not quite reach her eyes. "Well, Commander, we humans have always been quick learners. We like to think we make up for our late start with enthusiasm." "Enthusiasm," Vexus repeated, savoring the word. "How charming. Tell me, Captain. I have read about your world, Earth. A heavy gravity planet, yes? 1.4 times standard? That must be quite difficult for you. I imagine you must feel so much more comfortable here in the station's reduced gravity environment." One of the other humans, a male with pale skin and red hair, made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Torres shot him a look before turning back to Vexus. "We manage, Commander," she said simply. "I am certain you do," Vexus continued, warming to his theme. He gestured to his squad with two of his arms while keeping the other two clasped behind his back in a pose of superiority. "You see, we Corthians have optimized ourselves for combat effectiveness across all environments. We train regularly in variable gravity conditions, 1.3, 1.5, even 1.7 times standard. We barely notice the difference anymore." "Impressive," Torres said, her tone utterly flat. "Yes, well," Vexus made a show of looking around the reception hall. "We pride ourselves on being prepared for any challenge. Speaking of which, I understand the exchange program includes joint training exercises, combat simulations, tactical drills, that sort of thing." "That is correct, Commander," Torres confirmed. "We have a full schedule prepared, various scenarios designed to test interspecies cooperation and tactical flexibility." Vexus chittered softly, a sound that his squad recognized as precursor to a verbal strike. "How lovely. However, if I may be so bold, perhaps we could make things more interesting. You see, Captain, the Corthian Empire did not become a galactic power by accepting mediocrity. We believe in pushing ourselves, testing our limits." He paused, letting his secondary eyes focus on each human in turn. "What if we were to conduct some of these training exercises on Earth itself, your home world? It would give us an opportunity to experience this heavy gravity environment you evolved in. Consider it a learning opportunity for my warriors." The other humans exchanged glances. Torres remained perfectly still, her expression unchanged. "You want to train on Earth," she said slowly, as if making sure she understood correctly. "Why not?" Vexus spread all forearms wide in a gesture of magnanimous challenge. "Unless, of course, you believe your world might prove too challenging for us. I assure you, Captain, we are quite capable of adapting to your, what was it, 1.4 times standard gravity. We have trained in worse." There it was again, that small smile on Torres's face. It was the kind of smile that, had Vexus been a more perceptive individual, might have given him pause, but he was too caught up in his own superiority, too convinced of Corthian dominance, to notice the warning signs. "Commander Vexus," Torres said, her voice carrying across the reception hall with unexpected authority, "if you and your squad would like to participate in training exercises on Earth, we would be happy to accommodate you. In fact, we have a standard course that we run all our recruits through. Basic conditioning, obstacle navigation, equipment carries, nothing too complicated. Would that be acceptable?" "Basic training?" Torvin stepped forward, mandibles clicking with amusement. "Commander, they are offering us their recruit course. The course they give to untrained civilians. Vexus felt a surge of triumph. The humans were not even going to try to make this challenging. They were so aware of their own limitations that they assumed Corthian warriors needed to be coddled like fresh hatchlings. Captain Torres, Vexus said, his voice resonating with barely contained laughter. We would be delighted to experience your basic training course. I am certain my warriors will find it quite educational. Excellent, Torres replied, and this time her smile widened just a fraction. We can arrange transport to Earth within the next cycle. I should mention, Commander, that the course is typically run at our training facility in Colorado. The elevation there is approximately 1,500 meters above sea level. The atmosphere is a bit thinner than standard. I hope that will not be a problem. Thin atmosphere at elevation. Vexus waved one hand dismissively. Captain, we Corthians have operated in vacuum with minimal life support. I assure you, we will barely notice the difference. Perfect, Torres said. Then we will see you and your squad on Earth. Oh, and Commander, you might want to have your medical officer prepare some enhanced support supplements. Just a precaution. You understand. We would hate for any of your warriors to experience discomfort during their stay. Discomfort? Vexus let out a full harmonic laugh. Captain, I appreciate your concern, but I assure you, discomfort is not something Corthian warriors experience. We embrace hardship. We thrive in adversity. Your heavy world will be nothing more than a minor curiosity for us. Torres nodded slowly, and behind her the red-haired human was definitely smiling now. I am sure it will be, Commander, Torres said. I am very sure it will be. The transport shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere with a smooth, controlled burn that Vexus barely registered. He was too busy giving his squad their final briefing, his forearms gesturing emphatically as he spoke. Remember, warriors, we are representing the entire Corthian Empire here. These humans expect us to struggle, to falter, to beg for mercy from their so-called heavy world. We will prove them wrong. We will complete their basic training course without breaking stride. And then we will return to the station and file a report about how laughably easy their planet was. Understood. Understood, Commander. The squad replied in unison, their voices harmonizing with confidence. Prepare for landing, came the pilot's voice. Touching down at Peterson Space Force Base, Colorado, North American continent in 30 seconds. Vexus felt the shuttle settle onto the landing pad with barely a tremor. Earth. Finally. Time to show these primitive mammals what real warriors looked like. He stood, checked his equipment harness one final time, and marched toward the exit ramp. Deploy ramp, he ordered. The ramp began to lower, and bright sunlight flooded into the cabin. Vexus took a deep breath of recycled air, preparing himself for whatever thin, inadequate atmosphere Earth had to offer. He stepped forward onto the ramp, his boots making solid contact with the metal surface, and then he took his first step onto Earth's soil. The difference hit him like a physical blow. One moment he was moving with the fluid grace of a trained warrior. The next moment his entire body felt like it had been filled with liquid metal. His legs, which had carried him through 1,000 battlefields across a dozen worlds, suddenly screamed in protest. Each muscle fiber seemed to have doubled in weight. Every bone groaned under pressure it had never experienced. Vexus stumbled, actually stumbled, catching himself with all four arms before he face-planted onto the tarmac. Behind him he heard similar sounds of distress as his squad encountered Earth's gravity for the first time. No. This was not happening. 1.4 times standard. It was only 1.4 times standard. He had trained in 1.3. The difference should have been negligible. Commander, Telvorn's voice was strained, his words coming out in short gasps. Sir, something is wrong with the gravity generator. This cannot be 1.4. This has to be at least 2 times standard, maybe more. The gravity is exactly as advertised, squad leader, came a cheerful voice from across the landing pad. Vexus forced himself upright, fighting against the crushing weight that seemed determined to push him into the ground. Captain Rebecca Torres stood about 20 meters away, hands clasped behind her back, looking absolutely comfortable. No, worse than comfortable. She looked relaxed, casual, like she was standing in a garden rather than on a planet that was actively trying to crush every bone in Vexus's body. Welcome to Earth, Commander, Torres said, and started walking toward them. Walking. She was walking. Not shuffling. Not struggling, not fighting for every step. She walked with an easy rolling gait that covered ground effortlessly. Vexus watched in growing horror as she approached, her boots making soft sounds against the tarmac, her expression one of polite interest. I trust your journey was pleasant, Torres asked, stopping a few meters away. We have prepared quarters for you and your squad in Building 7. It is about half a kilometer from here. Follow me, please. Half a kilometer. Half a kilometer. Under normal circumstances, half a kilometer was nothing. A warm-up distance. Something you did while having a casual conversation. But here, now, with Earth's gravity trying to crush him into paste, half a kilometer sounded like a death march. Of course, Captain, Vexus managed to say, proud that his translator software managed to filter out most of the strain in his voice. Lead the way. Torres turned and started walking. Not marching, not hurrying, just walking at what Vexus's brain registered as a completely normal pace. Behind him, his squad began to move, and the sounds they made, clicking mandibles, labored breathing, the scrape of dragging feet, were sounds that Korthian warriors should never make. Every step was agony. Vexus's legs, which had seemed perfectly adequate moments ago, now felt like they were made of rotting vegetation. His knee joints popped and cracked with each movement. His spine, all three segments of it, compressed under the weight of his own body. His forearms, usually so useful for balance and combat, now just hung at his sides like dead weight, adding to the crushing pressure. 20 meters. They had covered maybe 20 meters, and Vexus was already breathing hard. His respiratory system, optimized for 0.9 standard gravity, was working overtime to supply oxygen to muscles that were screaming for more. Sweat began to bead on his carapace, something that only happened during extreme physical exertion or in high-temperature environments. So, Commander, Torres called back over her shoulder, still walking at that maddeningly casual pace. I thought we would start with a quick tour of the facility before getting you settled in. Nothing too strenuous, just a basic orientation walk. Should take about an hour. An hour of this. Vexus wanted to scream, wanted to call for an emergency extraction, wanted to admit that every single arrogant word he had spoken at the exchange station had been the words of a fool, but he was Commander Vexus of the Korthian Elite Guard, decorated warrior of 17 campaigns, and he would sooner die than show weakness in front of these humans. That sounds acceptable, Captain, he said, each word requiring concentration to force out. They continued walking. Torres kept up a steady stream of conversation, pointing out various buildings and explaining their functions. Vexus barely heard her. All his focus was on putting one foot in front of the other, on not collapsing, on maintaining some shred of dignity. That is the medical center, Torres was saying, gesturing with one hand toward a low building. We have it staffed around the clock, just in case anyone needs assistance during their stay. Some species find the adjustment period a bit challenging. Vexus's legs were on fire. His breathing was ragged, and they had covered maybe 100 meters. 100 meters. Behind him, Specialist Kreven made a sound that was dangerously close to a whimper. Are you all right back there? Torres asked, glancing back at the squad with what looked like genuine concern, but what Vexus was starting to suspect might be carefully disguised amusement. We are fine, Captain. Vexus lied through his clenched mandibles. Please continue. Excellent, Torres said, and then, in a move that Vexus's brain categorized as absolutely impossible, she bent down and picked up a small rock from the ground. Just bent down, casual as anything, and picked something up, from the ground. She straightened up, examined the rock for a moment, then tossed it aside and kept walking. Vexus stared. Bending down here would require compensating for 1.4 times his body weight, plus the additional force needed to reverse direction and stand back up. The amount of leg strength required for that simple movement was staggering, and Torres had done it without even breaking stride, like it was nothing, like it was a movement she had made 10,000 times before, which Vexus realized with growing dread she probably had. Commander, Torvin wheezed beside him, his exoskeleton creaking with strain. Permission to request a short rest period? Vexus wanted to say yes. His body was begging him to say yes. But Captain Torres was still walking ahead of them, her pace never varying, her breathing completely normal. If they stopped now, if they admitted they needed rest after less than 200 meters of walking, the humiliation would be complete. Request denied, squad leader, Vexus forced out. We continue. Here we are, Torres announced, stopping in front of a large building with double doors. Building 7. Your quarters are on the second floor. The elevator is currently under maintenance, I am afraid. So we will need to take the stairs. I hope that is not a problem. Stairs. Vexus looked at the building entrance and saw the stairwell through the glass doors. 2 flights of stairs. Each step would require lifting his entire crushing body weight against Earth's merciless gravity. Each step would be a small personal torture session. No problem at all, Captain, Vexus said. And he was proud, so proud, that his voice only shook a little bit. Torres opened the door, holding it with one hand, just standing there holding a door that probably weighed as much as a Corthian combat armor suit. She smiled at Vexus as he passed through. After you, Commander, she said. Oh, and do not worry about the altitude. Most species adjust to thinner air within a few days. You might feel a bit short of breath at first, but that is completely normal. Short of breath. Vexus was already gasping like he had just finished a sprint through a combat zone, and they had barely walked 200 meters on flat ground. And now Torres was telling him that the air itself was working against him too. Vexus looked at the stairs leading upward. 2 flights, 40 steps, maybe 50. His legs were already shaking. His respiratory system was already maxed out. His pride was already in tatters. But he was Commander Vexus. He did not quit. He would not quit. Shall we? Torres asked, gesturing toward the stairs. Vexus placed one foot on the first step and pushed upward. His leg muscles screamed. His knee joint made a popping sound that echoed in the stairwell. Sweat poured down his carapace in streams. He took the second step. Behind him, his elite squad of Corthian warriors, the best soldiers the Empire had ever produced, began their slow, agonizing climb, and Captain Rebecca Torres, born and raised in Earth's crushing gravity, simply walked up beside them, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Vexus stood at the starting line of what Captain Torres had cheerfully described as a basic conditioning course, and tried very hard not to collapse before they even began. His squad, all 20 warriors who had boarded that shuttle with such confidence, such arrogance, now looked like they had already survived a week-long siege, and they had only been on Earth for 6 hours. 6 hours of absolute torture disguised as orientation. All right, everyone, Torres announced, her voice carrying easily across the training field. This is our standard recruit obstacle course. We run our new enlistees through this on their first week to establish baseline fitness levels. Nothing too complicated. You have got a 400-meter run to start, followed by a climbing wall, rope traverse, equipment carry, low crawl section, and a final 200-meter sprint to the finish. The current record is 4 minutes and 32 seconds, set by Sergeant Lou here. She gestured to a human male standing nearby who nodded politely. He was not particularly large, maybe 1.7 meters tall, with a lean build that suggested endurance rather than raw power. He looked, Vexus thought with growing despair, completely ordinary. Now, Torres continued, we are not expecting you to break any records today. This is just a friendly introduction to how we train on Earth. Take your time, move at your own pace, and remember, if you need to stop at any point, just raise a hand and our medical team will assist you. Medical team. There was a medical team standing by, for a basic recruit training course. Vex's secondary eyes focused on the 3 humans in medical uniforms waiting near the sidelines, and he felt something cold settle in his stomach. We will run the course in 2 groups, Torres said. First, Sergeant Lou and 4 members of my team will demonstrate, then your squad can attempt it, Commander Vexus. Does that sound fair? Perfectly fair, Captain, Vexus said, forcing his voice to remain steady. His legs were still trembling from climbing those stairs. His lungs were still burning from the thin air. His pride was already shattered into so many pieces that he had stopped trying to collect them. But he was not going to quit. Not here. Not now. Excellent. Sergeant Lou, whenever you are ready. The sergeant and his team moved to the starting line. They wore simple physical training uniforms, shorts and shirts that seemed absurdly inadequate for combat training. No armor, no exoskeleton support, no gravity compensators, just fabric and flesh. 3, 2, 1, go. They exploded forward. There was no other word for it. One moment they were standing still. The next moment they were moving at a speed that Vexus's brain categorized as completely impossible for beings operating under 1.4 times standard gravity. Their legs pumped in smooth, efficient strides. Their arms swung in perfect rhythm. They covered the 400 meters in what seemed like seconds, their boots pounding against the dirt track with mechanical precision. By the 7 moons, breathed Specialist Criven beside Vexus. How are they moving that fast? Vexus did not answer. He could not answer. He was too busy watching in horror as Sergeant Lou reached the climbing wall, a 12-meter vertical structure made of wood and rope, and simply went up it like gravity was a polite suggestion rather than an iron law of physics. His hands gripped, his feet pushed, and he ascended with smooth, controlled movements that made it look easy. It was not easy. Vexus knew it was not easy. Climbing in 1.4 times standard gravity meant fighting against your own weight with every movement, meant pulling your crushing mass upward against a force that wanted nothing more than to slam you back down, and yet these humans, these supposedly primitive mammals, were doing it like they were born to it, which Vexus realized with a sinking feeling they were. "Commander," Torvern said quietly, his voice filled with dread. "I do not think I can run 400 meters. I do not think I can run 50 meters. "You will run, squad leader," Vexus said automatically, but his heart was not in the command. He was watching Sergeant Liu complete the rope traverse, hand over hand across a 15-meter gap, his body weight supported entirely by his arm strength. The sergeant moved with mechanical efficiency, each movement controlled and precise. The human team completed the course in 4 minutes and 47 seconds, 15 seconds slower than the record Torres had mentioned. They jogged back to the starting line, breathing slightly harder than normal but otherwise looking completely fine, ready to go again if asked. "Your turn, Commander," Torres said, and was that sympathy in her voice? Or was it pity? Vexus wanted to refuse, wanted to call for extraction, wanted to admit that he had made a terrible, arrogant mistake. The words from the exchange station came back to haunt him, his own voice echoing in his memory. "We barely notice the difference anymore. Your heavy world will be nothing more than a minor curiosity for us. Discomfort is not something Korthian warriors experience." Oh, how the universe loved irony. "Squad," Vexus said, moving to the starting line on legs that felt like they were made of crumbling stone. "Formation." His warriors assembled behind him, moving with obvious difficulty. Weapons Master Drolix's exoskeleton, which should have made him stronger and more capable, was now just additional weight crushing him down. Specialist Krivin's sensory stalks drooped with exhaustion. Squad leader Torvin's mandibles clicked in patterns that Vexus recognized as stress indicators. They were defeated before they even started, and they all knew it. 3, 2, 1, go. Vexus pushed forward with everything he had, forcing his legs to move, commanding his body to run. He managed maybe 10 meters at something approaching a running pace before his cardiovascular system started screaming at him. 20 meters and his legs felt like they were tearing themselves apart from the inside. 30 meters and his vision started to blur, black spots dancing at the edges. He slowed to what could charitably be called a jog, then to a walk, then to a shuffle. Behind him his squad was in similar condition, strung out across the track in various states of collapse. Some had fallen to their hands and knees, gasping for air that their bodies could not process fast enough. Others had simply stopped, standing in place, their bodies refusing to cooperate any further. Vexus reached the 400-meter mark after what felt like an eternity. His lungs were on fire, each breath a painful rasp. His legs were shaking so badly he could barely stand. Sweat poured off his carapace in rivers, and he was fairly certain that at least 2 of his knee joints had sustained damage. The climbing wall loomed before him like a vertical mountain. 12 meters. He had to climb 12 meters while his body weighed 1.4 times what it should, while his muscles were already exhausted, while Earth's atmosphere starved his cells of oxygen. He reached up and grasped the first handhold, pulled. His arm muscles, which had lifted weapons and thrown grenades and grappled with enemies across a dozen worlds, could barely lift his own body weight. He got one foot onto a lower hold, pushed, and managed to rise perhaps 30 centimeters. His grip failed. Vexus fell the short distance back to the ground, landing hard enough that his leg joints made alarming cracking sounds. He stood there, all 4 arms hanging limply, staring up at the wall that he could not climb, would never climb. Not here, not on this crushing death world. "Commander Vexus," came Torres's voice, gentle now, genuinely concerned. "Sir, you need to stop. Your medical readings are entering dangerous territory." Medical readings. Of course the humans were monitoring their vital signs. Of course they knew exactly how close to complete physical collapse the Korthian warriors were. "I can continue," Vexus said, the words coming out as barely a whisper. "No, Commander, you really cannot." Torres walked over, moving with that easy grace that Vexus now understood was not grace at all. It was raw physical capability born from evolving on a planet that crushed weakness out of your genetic line. "Your heart rate is at 230 beats per minute. Your core temperature has risen by 4 degrees. Your muscle tissue is showing signs of acute stress damage. If you continue, you risk permanent injury." "We are Korthian warriors," Vexus said, but even to his own ears it sounded hollow now. "We do not quit. This is not about quitting, Commander. This is about basic physiology. Torres gestured, and 2 medical personnel approached with what looked like support equipment. You are not weak. Your species is not inferior. You are simply not adapted to this environment. There is no shame in that. No shame? Vexus looked at his squad, scattered across the training course like debris from a destroyed ship, looked at the human soldiers standing nearby barely winded from their run, looked at Sergeant Liu, who had made the impossible look routine. We mocked you. We called your world a minor curiosity. We claimed we would barely notice the difference. Torres had the grace not to respond to that directly. Instead, she said, "Let me explain something, Commander. Earth's gravity is not just 1.4 times standard. That is the raw number, yes, but the effects are not linear. They are exponential. Every movement requires 1.4 times the energy. Every breath processes 1.4 times the load. Every muscle fiber works 1.4 times harder. Over time that compounds. What feels manageable for a minute becomes exhausting after an hour, and impossible after a day. But you," Vexus gestured weakly at Torres, at Sergeant Liu, at the other humans. "You move like it is nothing. Because we were born here, Commander. Every human alive today is descended from billions of years of evolution in this exact gravity. Our bones are denser than yours. Our muscle fibers are stronger per unit of mass. Our cardiovascular systems are optimized to pump blood upward against greater force. Our inner ears have more sophisticated balance systems. We are not superior warriors, Commander Vexus. We are just products of our environment, the same as you are products of yours." Specialist Criven had managed to make it to the base of the climbing wall, but she was on her hands and knees, dry heaving, her body in full revolt. Weapons Master Drolix had collapsed 50 meters back, his exoskeleton sparking where stress had damaged the systems. Squad leader Torvin was being examined by the medical team, his vital signs evidently critical enough to require immediate attention. "If we brought you to our home world," Vexus said slowly, the realization dawning with crushing clarity, "we would have the advantage. In 0.9 standard gravity, you would be the one struggling." Torres nodded. "Absolutely. We would be stronger in lower gravity, able to jump higher and move faster, but we would also lose some of our fine motor control. Our proprioception would be off, and we would probably be dealing with fluid redistribution issues. Different environments favor different adaptations, Commander. That is basic evolutionary biology." "Then why?" Vexus asked, genuinely confused now. "Why did the Galactic Council approve Earth for the military exchange program? If your world is this hostile to other species, why allow it?" "Oh, they debated it for 3 cycles, Torres said with a slight smile. "The compromise was that we can host training on Earth, but only for species who volunteer and who pass medical clearance first, which I should mention. Your species did. Your physiology is robust enough to handle 1.4 times standard for short periods without permanent damage. You just can't perform at combat effectiveness here." "Combat effectiveness," Vexus repeated bitterly. "We cannot even complete your basic recruit training." "No, you cannot. But our recruits are humans, born on Earth, adapted to Earth. You are comparing yourself to beings who have spent their entire lives in this environment. That is not a fair comparison, Commander." Vexus looked at the obstacle course, at the climbing wall he could not climb, at the equipment carry section he would never reach. He looked at his squad, his elite warriors reduced to exhausted wrecks by a simple training run. He thought about all the species he had fought, all the battles he had won, all the medals he had earned, and he felt something he had not felt in decades: humility. "Captain Torres," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I owe humanity an apology. We came here with arrogance, with certainty of our superiority, with mockery in our hearts. We were fooled. You were confident, Commander. There is a difference." Torres offered him a hand, that same gesture from the exchange station, the one he had accepted with such condescension. "Come on, let us get you and your squad to medical for proper evaluation, then some rest. Tomorrow we can discuss modified training protocols that will not put your health at risk." Vexus took her hand, let her help pull him upright, and felt the strength in that grip, not the strength of superiority, not the strength of dominance, but simply the strength of a being perfectly adapted to their world, helping a visitor who was not. "Thank you, Captain," he said, "and for what it is worth, I think I am beginning to understand why the other species whisper about humans with respect." Torres smiled, genuinely this time. "We are just doing what we have always done, Commander. Surviving on the planet that tried its hardest to kill us and somehow managing to thrive anyway." 3 days later, Commander Vexus sat in the observation lounge of Building 7, watching human recruits run through the same obstacle course that had destroyed his pride and nearly destroyed his squad. His legs still ached, his joints still made concerning popping sounds when he moved, but his perspective, that had changed completely. Captain Torres entered the lounge carrying 2 containers of what she had called coffee, a human stimulant beverage that Vexus had grown surprisingly fond of during his recovery period. She handed him one and sat down beside him, her movements still maddeningly casual, still perfectly controlled. "How is your squad doing, Commander?" she asked. "Recovering," Vexus replied, watching a human recruit, a female who could not have been more than 20 cycles old, scale the climbing wall in under 30 seconds. "Physically, our medical officer says we will be fine, no permanent damage. Emotionally, well, that is a different story. Wounded pride heals slower than wounded muscle," Torres observed. "Believe me, we know." Vexus turned to look at her, his secondary eyes focusing with interest. "Do you?" "Oh, absolutely." Torres sipped her coffee, her eyes on the training course below. "When we first made contact with the Galactic Council, when we first tried to participate in multi-species operations, we had our own humbling experiences. We went to a low-gravity station, 0.6 standard, for a diplomatic conference. Our delegation spent the entire first day bumping into ceilings, overcompensating on movements, and generally looking like clumsy children learning to walk." "Really?" Vexus felt something like relief wash through him. "You struggled in lower gravity." "Struggled is putting it mildly, Commander." One of our ambassadors tried to sit down and accidentally launched himself halfway across the room. Another attempted to pour water and sent the entire pitcher floating away. We looked ridiculous. And the other species, they laughed, not cruelly, but they laughed. Vexus clicked his mandibles softly, a gesture that in Corthian culture expressed understanding mixed with embarrassment. "I suppose we are not so different then. We both look foolish when removed from our native environments." "Exactly." Torres leaned back in her chair, a movement that Vexus now understood required unconscious calculation of force and momentum that humans learned as infants. "The thing is, Commander, the galaxy is full of diversity. The Corthians evolved on a 0.9 gravity world with a thick atmosphere and abundant resources. That shaped you into excellent strategists and endurance fighters. Humans evolved on a 1.4 gravity world with extreme climate variations and relatively scarce resources. That shaped us into stubborn, adaptable generalists with ridiculous muscle density." "Ridiculous muscle density," Vexus repeated with something that might have been amusement. "That is an accurate description. When your medical team ran scans on Sergeant Liu, they showed me the comparison. Human muscle tissue is approximately 60% more dense than Corthian muscle tissue. Your bone structure is 30% more robust. Your cardiovascular system operates at pressures that would rupture our blood vessels. And yet," Torres said gently, "on a 0.9 gravity world you would run circles around us. Your respiratory system would be more efficient in your home atmosphere. Your sensory stocks would give you perceptual advantages we could never match. Your forearms would provide tactical options we have to compensate for with tools and teamwork." "Different does not mean inferior," Vexus said slowly, testing the words. "Different does not mean inferior," Torres confirmed. "It just means different. The galaxy needs Corthian warriors just as much as it needs human soldiers. We each bring unique capabilities to the table." Below them the human recruits were finishing their run. One of them, a male with dark skin and a lean build, collapsed at the finish line gasping for air, his body clearly pushed to its limits. 2 of his fellow recruits helped him up, supporting his weight between them. "That recruit," Vexus said, pointing with one arm. "He barely finished the course. He looks as exhausted as my warriors did." "That is Private Jackson," Torres said. "He is from our lunar colony, born and raised in 0.16 standard gravity. Coming to Earth for basic training is almost as hard for him as it was for you. Maybe harder, actually, since he is human and we expect him to perform at Earth normal standards eventually." Vexus stared at her. "You recruit from low-gravity colonies, but they would struggle just as we did." "They do struggle. For weeks, sometimes months. But they adapt. Slowly, painfully. We give them modified training protocols, extra time, medical support. Eventually most of them reach acceptable performance standards. Not all. Some wash out, but most make it through." "That seems inefficient," Vexus said, though his tone was thoughtful rather than critical. "Why not simply recruit only from Earth?" "Because," Torres said, her voice taking on a tone of quiet pride. "We learned a long time ago that diversity makes us stronger. Lunar colonists think differently than Earth natives. They have different problem-solving approaches, different spatial reasoning, different perspectives on combat and tactics. Yes, they struggle with the physical requirements. Yes, it takes extra resources to train them, but what they bring to our military in terms of cognitive diversity is worth the investment." Vexus processed this, his mind working through the implications. "You are saying that you value different perspectives even when they come with physical disadvantages." "I am saying that physical capability is only one component of military effectiveness, Commander. Strategy, creativity, adaptability, the ability to think in non-standard ways, these things matter just as much as being able to run fast or climb high. Often they matter more." "We did not understand that," Vexus admitted. "We Corthians have spent millennia optimizing for physical perfection. We assumed that superior physiology equaled superior warriors, and you are superior warriors in your environment for your type of combat. But warfare is not one-dimensional, Commander. Neither is strength." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the recruits below begin a cooldown routine. Vexus saw humans of different sizes, different builds, different apparent capability levels, all working together, supporting each other. "Captain Torres," Vexus said finally, "when we return to the exchange station, I will be filing a report with the Galactic Council. It will not be the report I intended to write when we arrived. It will be honest about our failures here, about our inability to perform in Earth gravity, but it will also be complimentary of human military training, human adaptability, and human wisdom and understanding that strength comes in many forms. I appreciate that, Commander, and for what it is worth I will be filing my own report. It will note that the Corthian warriors demonstrated exceptional mental toughness by even attempting to course under conditions that were severely disadvantageous to their physiology. That takes courage. Courage or stupidity," Vexus said wryly. "I am not certain which." Torres laughed, a sound that Vexus had learned to appreciate over the past few days. "Sometimes the line between the two is pretty thin, Commander." "Indeed." Vexus finished his coffee, the bitter taste somehow appropriate for the moment. "We will be departing tomorrow, returning to the station. This has been, I think the human phrase is, an educational experience. That is one way to put it." Torres stood, offering her hand again. "Safe travels, Commander Vexus. And if you ever want to send Corthian trainees to Earth for exchange programs in the future, we would be happy to host them, with properly modified protocols, of course." Vexus took her hand, shaking it firmly, matching her grip strength as best he could. "I think we will need some time to recover our dignity first, Captain. But perhaps eventually, if nothing else, it would teach our warriors humility. We seem to have had a shortage of that lately." "Humility is a valuable lesson," Torres agreed. "One we all need to relearn sometimes." The next morning, as Vexus and his squad prepared to board the transport shuttle that would take them back to orbit, back to point 9 standard gravity where they could move and breathe like proper warriors again, Vexus took one last look at Earth, the blue and green planet that had humbled him so thoroughly, that had taught him such painful lessons about assumptions and arrogance. Squad leader Torvin approached, moving with obvious relief now that they were in the shuttle's point 9 gravity environment. "Commander, the squad is ready for departure. I think everyone is eager to leave this crushing world behind." "I am certain they are, squad leader." Vexus continued to stare at Earth through the viewport, "but I think I will miss it in a strange way. It taught me something important." "What is that, sir?" "That strength is not about who can lift the most weight or run the fastest or fight the hardest. Strength is about surviving in whatever environment you find yourself in, and finding ways to thrive despite the obstacles. Humans are strong not because Earth made them physically powerful, but because Earth tried to kill them for millions of years and they were stubborn enough to survive anyway." "That is a very philosophical observation, Commander," Torvorn said carefully. 3 days on Earth does that to you, squad leader. Among other things, Vexus turned away from the viewport. "Take us up. Time to go home." As the shuttle lifted away from Earth's surface, Vexus felt the crushing weight gradually ease, felt his body return to something approaching normal function, but the weight of his new understanding, that stayed with him, and somehow, he did not mind carrying it at all.